What's going on, everyone? Today I bring you another really fun build to run in Remnant 2. This makes use of the Handler class to gain more skill damage, bleed, and a free doggo to revive you if you mess up. Then you have Havoc form from Archon for some nutty lightning damage and easy mobility. You might remember I already did make a Havoc build, but this one is very different. We get to scale back pretty quickly and gain much more damage from it than you might think. This is the Bleeding Storm build. So for the Prime class, you want Handler. This grants you the Prime perk of allowing the dog to revive you if you go down. This has a 90-second cooldown, making it usable multiple times a fight. Very nice for bosses, as you don't get punished that harshly at all if you aren't as good at dodging attacks. Then the dog can be used to revive allies as well, making this a good damage build that also has some decent co-op play. You also gain 30% range damage and skill damage. This will make your Havoc form really powerful while also helping to keep your gun damage quite high, granting you the best of both worlds for some more well-rounded gameplay. Just be sure to keep the good boy from dying by using a Relic when his health is low. He can survive pretty well now that they gave him some significant buffs. As for the skill, you want Attack Dog. This grants a 20% damage bonus that lasts 23 seconds. It's going to buff all damage and puts you on par with the Engineer Havoc builds while active. As for the subclass, you want Archon. Now, we get a lot of bonuses to mod damage and mod regen here, which again is going to make this build well-rounded. So when Havoc form isn't active, you gain a good amount of damage in another form as well. But of course, we're mainly running it for the skill Havoc form. Become the lightning mage you've always wanted to be and melt your enemies with electrocution. Our idea is to use this and become extremely fast while it's active, also getting very high crit numbers. With this particular build, you don't need to blink nearly as often, as we're going to use a trait to make our movement speed extremely quick while attacking. As always, avoid using the Lightning Shield ability because it simply uses too much of the timer up. For armor, I found a pretty fun look that has decent damage reduction to it. Bruiser helmet, Technician chest, Technician boots, and Technician gloves. This does put you in the heavy dodge range, but with a concoction, you can get back to medium and still avoid dying as much. I messed with a few different relics here and ultimately decided upon the Salvaged Heart. The much faster use speed is ridiculously helpful, and most of the time it's going to heal you fully. This one tends to work better if you have gray health, and usually you will have at least some, making this a pretty good heal. If it doesn't heal you fully, the faster use speed makes it easier to use a second one really quick. As for the fragments, you want skill duration, skill damage, and casting speed. The duration is actually a significant boost to the skill's length, and the damage is self-explanatory. As for casting speed, this helps get the damage out faster for the Havoc form and with your mods. I love being able to use everything rapidly. The main weapon you want is Merciless. I stand by what I've said before that this gun is really not worth it due to the bad reload. But since we're leaning heavily into bleed, it is going to be the best choice regardless. We're going to get some decent damage from this as it can crit often and shoots a lot of bullets quickly. Then you also have its mod Bloodline, which can deal huge crit that gets even better when shot through multiple enemies. Finally, we throw on Twisting Wounds. This will allow the gun to proc 2 separate stacks of bleeding. Bleeding on the enemy gives us more damage due to an amulet and makes for some nice overtime damage. Add in the dog, who can also bleed, and you might have 3 total stacks of bleed on any enemy. When it comes to melee, run whatever you want because honestly we don't melee much, but I chose the Nightshade Gauntlets. Easily one of the most annoying items to get due to the Nightweaver having a very troublesome alt kill. However, they are very fast and look cool, adding this misty effect if you backstep. Throw on the Mutator Vampire Blade and it'll deal more damage to bleeding targets. Works pretty well with how we have everything set up. Then you have the Sidarm. The Tech 22 is my go-to choice when running anything crit. It shoots a lot of bullets quickly and can dump some serious damage in only a few seconds. Also having an excellent reload that makes up for Merciless, which is on the slower side. Using corrosive rounds will grant you even more crit and apply corroded to the enemy. This mod is pretty important as it makes enemies take more damage. So with this and bleed, we're going to get Havoc form to get a large increase in damage while it's active. Lastly, throw on Bullet Weaver for the Mutator. Mod use increases the fire speed of your sidearm by 20% and your mod generates 15% faster, which means we're going to have near limitless use of the corrosive rounds and get the already rapid fire shooting like crazy. Honestly, the pairing surprised me with how well it made the gun perform. With all 3 weapons, you gain the ability to throw out high damage mods repeatedly and melt with consistent crit, applying bleed and corrosion for a lot of damage over time, then allowing us to get the most out of our powerful skill. When it comes to trinkets, you want a way to keep statuses active longer and deal better crit damage. Use the Abrasive Whetstone for your amulet. This makes any damage against a bleeding enemy have 15% more crit chance with 30% more crit damage. A massive boost that helps all of our yellow numbers hit hard. We can very easily apply bleed with Merciless, and then since the dog can do so as well, it's extremely easy to have this bonus active 24/7. Timekeeper's Jewel will increase the duration of status effects applied by you, which makes the bleed and corrosion last 20 seconds instead of 10. This is cool because you can quickly apply both and then activate Havoc form. And for a huge portion of that skill, you're getting 2 different bonuses. Since the dog bleeds, you might think this isn't really all that important, but remember, there are a lot of flying bosses, or at least bosses the dog can't reach, and yeah, that doesn't go so well. So with the Jewel, you never need to switch equipment and can still get the bonus damage active easily. Probability Cord increases crit damage by 30%, which improves both our guns, both our mods, and our Havoc skill. Burden of the Gambler disables weak spots, but increases crit chance by 10% and crit damage by 20%. This crit bonus applies to all damage that can crit, not just ranged, and not just mods. Now, we do lose weak spot damage from Merciless, but the extra crit on our skill is well worth it. Plus, as you're probably familiar with by now, there's a lot of times where you can't even hit weak spots. Max out your skill, and then just use your guns as backup damage with this one. Sapphire Dreamstone makes it so crit hits reduce skill cooldowns by 3% every 2 seconds. Since we're building heavily into crit, this will greatly cool down your skill and keep Attack Dog active longer as well. Some people were upset they couldn't use my last Archon build as it had the Devour loop, but this works very similarly and doesn't require you beating Apocalypse already. You don't have infinite skill usage like the other setup, but your damage is much higher, and you can get it back very quickly if you keep up the pressure. With all these items, you get very high crit for guns, mods, and your main skill, with a way to get the skill back and keep statuses active. You'll activate Attack Dog, apply Corrosive, then Bleed, and go to town with Havoc, granting incredible damage and a way to use everything in your arsenal without anything feeling weak. Because we only get one concoction here, you don't have a ton of options, so I went with Strong Drink as it reduces our encumbrance just enough to have a medium dodge. Better for staying alive purposes. When it comes to traits, you want the usual, with one specific trait that's very powerful here. Flashcaster to quicken your mod and skill speed by a lot. Fortify so you aren't very squishy and can take hits here and there. Kinship doesn't particularly do anything, but since it's on Handler, we can't really change it. Triage will bump your healing effectiveness, helping that Relic to heal you even if gray health isn't as present. Vigor for health, Endurance for stamina, Spirit for mods, and Expertise for skill cooldown. Finally, we have Footwork. This skill is insanely good with this build, increasing your movement speed while aiming down sights. Allows you to dodge ranged attacks by simply strafing to the side, keeping your guns firing and not always wasting stamina on dodging. But the crazy thing is that while you're in Havoc form, attacking with the lightning counts as aiming down sights, meaning you hold down the button and can zoom around the screen. For most bosses, this is enough to get out of all of their attacks, stopping you from spamming blink and wasting the skill. It's also very nice for travel as you're much faster. Definitely a trait you're going to want to run here for a much better experience in Havoc form. Well, how do you actually use this build? It's pretty simple actually. Walk into a fight and activate your Attack Dog skill. Then use Corrosive rounds just with a few bullets to apply Corrosion. Switch to Merciless and apply 2 stacks of Bleed. Go Havoc and start shredding some health. This will deal a considerable amount of damage for some time, and once it runs out, you go back to your guns, shooting to crit as much as possible and use both mods for high damage. Your skills are going to cool down quickly, letting you get back into Havoc form and do it all again. This build works wonders as everything you have is effective. However, one major issue does arise, and you might run into it. Thick skin and elemental resistance. This reduces your crit and elemental damage, which greatly hurts Havoc form. This will be very rare to get, and you could push through regardless, but it's definitely not something you want. As for bosses, it works on everything. I did a full Apocalypse run with this and then helped some people in random lobbies. The dog getting you back up at least once per fight is insane, and if you go down for good, he'll actually still revive your ally. As long as you're proccing Bleed, you're in business, and the increase in speed should prevent you from taking any hit at all. I actually decided to fight the final boss with this, even though Havoc form really can't hit him that well, and it still worked. Easy to destroy the orbs with Havoc form, and the Bleed crit does its job well. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, a like down below would be awesome. I personally love Havoc form as it's just the ultimate power feel you can get in the game. Also finding a build that works pretty well with Handler, as it's one of the lesser used classes. Do try this one out as it's extremely effective and will make for a fun playthrough. Go become the perfect bleeding storm, and I'll catch you next time.